The promotion is yours, if you agree to one weekend with my family. Claire Whitmore said it without blinking, seated behind the glass desk in her corner office while the Chicago skyline turned copper behind her. For 5 years, I had watched my boss deliver bad news with surgical calm and good news as if it were another item on a checklist. But that sentence landed somewhere between a bribe and a hostage negotiation. I stayed standing. "Could you repeat that?" I asked. Her fingers tightened around a silver pen. It was the only sign that she was nervous. "You heard me. I was hoping I hadn't." "Claire," I said, dropping the formality I usually kept between us, "if my promotion depends on spending a weekend with you, I'm not interested." For one long second, she looked offended. Then the color left her face. "That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you said." She opened the top drawer, pulled out a cream envelope, and slid it across the desk. "Read it." I didn't move. "Daniel, please." The word please sounded unfamiliar in her voice. I stepped forward, opened the envelope, and found a signed promotion letter from Hartwell Development's Executive Committee. Regional Director of Community Projects. Salary, benefits, authority, start date. The approval signatures were dated 3 days earlier. Claire folded her hands. "It was yours before I asked. It remains yours if you say no." I phrased that terribly. Terribly is generous. I panicked. "You don't panic." "I do now." That answer made me look at her more carefully. Claire was 36, sharp enough to make senior partners prepare twice for meetings, and so controlled that office rumors had turned her into a machine wearing tailored navy suits. Yet that evening, one pearl earring sat slightly crooked, and there was a faint crease between her eyebrows that I had never seen survive more than a few seconds. She drew a breath. "My grandmother turns 80 this weekend. My entire family will be at our lake house in Wisconsin. 6 weeks ago, to stop them from trying to reconcile me with someone, I told her I was seeing a man." "And you picked me?" "I didn't pick anyone." She asked whether there was someone in my life who made me feel safe. I said there was a person at work I trusted more than anyone. She decided that meant we were dating. I let her believe it. That is not better.
No.
It is simply the truth. She stood and came around the desk, but stopped several feet away, keeping the distance deliberate. "I need one weekend. Friday night through Sunday afternoon. Separate rooms. No physical affection beyond whatever you are comfortable with. No interference with your promotion. You can leave at any time, for any reason. And on Monday, if you want, I will tell the committee that I mishandled this conversation and recuse myself from every future decision involving you." I should have said no. The ethical answer, the sane answer, the answer that would let me sleep without wondering whether I had traded dignity for a title, was no. But then she added quietly, "My former fiancé will be there." The mystery changed shape. "Before I tell you why I agreed, take a second to imagine yourself in that office. Would you walk away from the weekend, even if the promotion was already signed? If this story pulls you in, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments whether trust can survive a request that begins so badly." I set the letter down. "Who is he?"
Graham Hale.
"You were engaged to Graham Hale? For 11 months. And your family wants you back together. My mother does. My uncle does. Graham certainly does. What do you want?" Her expression shifted, not softer exactly, but more honest. "I want to attend my grandmother's birthday without being treated like an unfinished family project." That was the first answer she gave that sounded less like a plan and more like a wound. I walked to the window. 20 floors below, headlights streamed along Wacker Drive. I thought about the promotion letter. I also thought about the last 5 years, about Claire defending my team when a partner wanted to cut our neighborhood housing program, about the time she stayed until 2 in the morning helping me rebuild a presentation after a server failure, about the fact that she remembered my coffee order but had never once asked what I did on weekends. Our relationship was built on competence. Clean lines, clear expectations. She had just stepped across every one of them. "If I go," I said, "we put the boundaries in writing, not a contract, an email. The promotion is independent. I'm your guest, not your employee." I can correct any lie that involves me. And if your family humiliates me for sport, I leave. A faint breath escaped her, almost a laugh. That last rule may be difficult to enforce. Then make it your first priority. I will. And there's one more thing. She waited. You tell me everything relevant before we arrive.
No surprises.
Claire looked me straight in the eye. I can do that. By Saturday night, I would learn that even the most honest promise can fail when someone does not know which truth matters most. At 7 the next morning, Claire pulled up outside my apartment in a dark gray SUV instead of the black company sedan she normally used. She wore jeans, a cream sweater, and a camel coat. I had seen her in formal wear, construction site gear, and once in a rain poncho during a flooded site inspection. I had never seen her dressed like someone who might stop for gas station coffee. She lowered the passenger window. You're late. I checked my watch. It's 6:58. You're emotionally late. That is not a real measurement. It is in my family. I put my bag in the back and climbed in. 2 coffee cups waited in the console. Black, 1 sugar, she said. Unless you've changed in the last 4 years. I took the cup. You remember my coffee? I remember operational details. Of course. For the first hour, we discussed logistics. Her grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, had raised Claire for several years after Claire's father died. Her mother, Vivian, loved order, appearances, and what Claire called strategic marriages. Her older brother, Thomas, managed the family's charitable foundation. Her younger sister, Sophie, taught elementary school in Madison and had once threatened Graham with a shrimp fork. That sounds promising, I said. She missed. Less promising. Claire's mouth curved, and for a second she looked 10 years younger. Then she told me Graham had become close to the family during their engagement. Even after Claire ended it, he continued advising her mother on investments. He had been invited to the birthday weekend because Eleanor still believed the breakup had been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? I asked. The kind people invent when the truth is inconvenient. I waited, but she kept her eyes on the road. Is that everything relevant? It's everything necessary. That is not what we agreed. Her grip tightened on the wheel. I ended the engagement because Graham did not respect my work. That sounds like a summary. It is all I can give you right now. I should have pushed harder. Instead, I watched bare trees give way to open farmland and told myself privacy was not dishonesty. 2 hours later, we turned onto a narrow road lined with stone walls and entered the Whitmore property. Claire sat motionless behind the wheel. You can still say no, I said. So can you. I asked first. She looked toward the house. My grandmother has been asking when she can meet you. If we drive away, I can live with disappointing everyone else. Not her. I understood that kind of loyalty. My mother had died 3 years earlier after a long illness, and there were still moments when I reached for my phone to call her. You did not get infinite chances with the people who had loved you before you became useful. I opened my door. Then let's not keep her waiting. Claire caught my sleeve before I stepped out. The touch lasted less than a second, but it stopped me. Daniel. I turned. Thank you. There was no executive polish in her voice, only relief. That was the first moment the weekend became dangerous. Not because she was my boss and not because of the promotion, but because I liked being the person who could make that look appear on her face. The front door opened before we reached it. A small woman with silver hair stepped onto the porch wearing a red cardigan and carrying a cane she seemed to regard as an insult. Claire's composure vanished. She crossed the remaining distance quickly and wrapped both arms around her grandmother. You came, Eleanor said into her shoulder. I said I would. You say many things when you are trying to end a phone call. Then Eleanor looked past her at me. Her eyes were bright and assessing. So this is Daniel. I offered my hand. She ignored it and hugged me. You are taller than Claire described. Claire took my bag from the groundskeeper as if she suddenly needed something to do. I never described his height. You said he was impossible to overlook. I meant professionally. Of course you did. Eleanor linked her arm through mine and led me inside. The entry hall smelled of beeswax, cedar, and something baking with cinnamon. Family photographs covered one wall. Generations in sailboats, graduation gowns, military uniforms, and formal wedding portraits. Claire appeared in many of them until her early 20s. After that, she was mostly absent. Vivian Whitmore waited beside a broad staircase. She had Claire's posture and none of her warmth. Her silver blonde hair was cut perfectly at her jaw, and her smile arrived one measured degree at a time. "Daniel Mercer," she said. "Claire's employee." "Mother," Claire warned. "I'm the regional operations manager until Monday," I said. "After that, I'll be regional director." Vivian's gaze flicked toward Claire. How fortunate. The implication hung there, polished and ugly. Claire stepped beside me. Daniel's promotion was approved by the executive committee before I invited him. I had 1 vote out of 7. I didn't ask. You didn't have to. A man in his early 40s came in from the library, loosening his tie. Thomas had the broad shoulders of someone who still believed college rowing achievements mattered. His wife, Maya, followed with 2 children racing around her knees. "Claire brought reinforcements," Thomas said. "She brought a guest," Eleanor corrected. Then Sophie appeared, carrying a tray of glasses. She was younger than Claire by 6 years, with dark curls and an open face. She looked at me, looked at Claire, and grinned. "Oh, I like him already." "You have not spoken to him," Claire said. "He survived the driveway." Before I could answer, another voice came from behind us. Claire never needed reinforcements. Graham Hale stood in the archway wearing a charcoal sweater and the kind of relaxed expression that probably required practice. He was tall, handsome, and perfectly at ease in a house that did not belong to him. He crossed the room and kissed Eleanor's cheek before extending his hand to me. "Graham, Daniel." His grip was firm, his smile friendly, and his eyes calculating. "I've heard impressive things," he said. "That makes one of us." Sophie coughed into her glass to hide a laugh. Graham glanced at Claire. "Still recruiting people who challenge you?" "Only the useful ones." There was history in the ease of their exchange. Not affection exactly, but old familiarity. I felt something tighten in my chest and immediately resented it. Jealousy had no place in a fictional relationship, especially one involving my boss. Lunch was served in a sunroom overlooking the lake. Eleanor placed me beside her and asked about everything except my job, where I grew up, whether I cooked, why I still lived in the city when I claimed to like quiet mornings. Claire watched the questioning with visible alarm. "Grandmother, he is not applying for citizenship. I am deciding whether he has substance." "Did I pass?" I asked. Eleanor buttered a roll. "You have not lied yet." Across the table, Graham smiled into his wine. The conversation moved to the following day's birthday dinner. Thomas discussed the guest list. Vivian discussed flowers. Sophie discussed how many candles could legally be placed on one cake before the fire department became involved. Then Eleanor reached for Claire's hand. "I'm simply glad you will not be alone this year." Claire's fingers went still beneath hers. "I'm not alone, Nana. You know what I mean." "I do," Claire said softly. "That's the problem." Vivian intervened. "Your grandmother worries because you work constantly. Graham has always understood the obligations that come with this family." "So does Daniel," Claire said. Graham leaned back. "Does he?" The table quieted. I set down my fork. I understand that Claire has a demanding family, a demanding job, and very little patience for men who explain her own life to her. Sophie laughed out loud. Thomas looked impressed despite himself. Vivian did not. Claire looked at me and something passed between us. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. We were no longer simply performing. We were becoming allies. After lunch, she showed me upstairs. My room was at the end of the West Hall, directly across from hers. "This was not deliberate," she said. "I wasn't worried until you said that." She opened my door. The room held a 4-poster bed, a fireplace, and windows facing the lake. My suitcase had already been placed on a bench. "The bathroom is through there," Dinner is at 7. We have 2 hours before family photographs. Family photographs? Annual tradition. Am I expected to be in them? Her face changed. I didn't think about that. Your grandmother will. Claire leaned against the doorframe. You can refuse. I know. I mean it. You do not owe me evidence. Her choice of words stayed with me. Evidence of what? That I'm capable of having a life outside work. The answer came too quickly, as though she had been carrying it for years. I took off my coat. Claire, why does your family need proof? She looked down the hall before answering. Because when I ended my engagement, I also left the family company. To them, both decisions were symptoms of the same failure. What failure?
Mine.
Before I could ask more, a child shouted downstairs and something crashed. Claire straightened automatically. Dinner at 7, she repeated. Then she walked away. I unpacked, but the room felt too quiet. Through the window, I saw Claire crossing the lawn toward the boathouse alone. I told myself not to follow her. 10 minutes later, I was outside in my coat, walking the same path. The boathouse doors stood open. Inside, 2 wooden boats rested on racks, and old paddles hung from beams darkened by age. Claire sat on the edge of the dock, staring across the water. I thought you were resting, she said without turning. I'm terrible at resting in houses where people evaluate my substance. You did well. I haven't lied yet. That earned a small smile. I sat several feet away, leaving room between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Wind pressed ripples across the lake. Somewhere in the trees, a woodpecker struck a trunk with stubborn rhythm. My father taught me to sail here, Claire said. He died when I was 19.
I'm sorry.
He was the only person in my family who believed leaving could be an act of loyalty to yourself. I looked at her profile. Is that why you left the family company? Partly. And Graham? She pulled her sleeves over her hands. He loved the version of me that fit into his plans. That sounds more complete than what you said in the car. It is still not complete. I felt irritation rise. We agreed on no surprises. I know. Then tell me what happened. She turned to face me. For the first time since we arrived, she looked less like my boss than a woman deciding whether trust was worth the risk. 3 weeks before our wedding, I discovered Graham and my mother had prepared an agreement for me to leave Hartwell after the marriage and take a ceremonial role at the Whitmore Foundation. They had already chosen my title. They had even drafted the announcement. Without asking you. They thought asking would create unnecessary conflict. I stared at the lake because looking directly at her felt too intimate. What did Graham say when you confronted him? That I was exhausted. That after a year or two, I would thank him. The calmness in her voice made the story worse. So you ended it. I returned the ring that night. And your family calls that a misunderstanding. They call it fear of commitment. I understood then why she had invented someone. She had not needed a boyfriend. She had needed a witness. A person standing beside her when the people who loved her rewrote her choices. You should have told me this before we came, I said. I should have. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid you would look at me the way you are looking at me now. How am I looking at you? As if you feel sorry for me. I don't. She studied my face. I'm angry for you, I said. There's a difference. The wind lifted a strand of hair across her cheek. She brushed it back, but her hand trembled slightly. Thank you, she whispered. It was the second time she had thanked me that day. The first had made me feel useful. The second made me want to reach across the space between us. I did not. Instead, I said, now I need to tell you why your offer bothered me so much. She waited. 8 years ago, I worked for a construction firm in Denver. My fiancé's father was a partner. He offered me a senior role I hadn't earned yet. When I refused, she said I cared more about pride than our future. 2 months later, she left. Claire's expression softened. Was she right? About my pride? Probably. About the job?
No.
Do you regret refusing? I regret that she believed love meant accepting a debt I could never repay. Claire looked down at her hands. And then I tied your promotion to a personal favor. You untied it quickly, but I still made you feel trapped. Yes.
I'm sorry.
There was no defense in the apology.
No qualification.
Just ownership. Something shifted between us then. The lake house, the fake relationship, the signed promotion letter, none of it disappeared. But for the first time, I believed we might leave the weekend knowing each other rather than merely surviving it. On the walk back, Claire slipped once on the damp stones. I caught her elbow. Her hand landed against my chest, and we froze for half a second too long. Operational detail, I said quietly. She looked up at me. What? You're shorter than I described. A surprised laugh escaped her. It was warm, unguarded, and so different from the controlled sound I occasionally heard in meetings that I nearly forgot to let go. She stepped back first. That evening, during the family photograph, Eleanor placed Claire beside me and instructed me to put one hand at her waist. You do not have to, Claire murmured. I know. I rested my hand lightly against the fabric of her dress. She stood close enough that I could feel her breathing change. The camera flashed. For one bright instant, the lie looked real. Dinner that night was less a meal than a carefully staged test. The dining room table could seat 20, though only 9 adults and 2 children were present. Candles burned in silver holders. Rain tapped the tall windows. At each place setting, someone had arranged handwritten cards in Eleanor's looping script. Mine read, Daniel, ask me about the summer Claire sank the sailboat. I held it up. Claire closed her eyes. Nana, you were 14, Eleanor said. It is no longer classified. I did not sink it. Sophie forgot to secure the centerboard. Sophie lifted her wineglass. History is written by the survivors. For a while, dinner stayed easy. Claire teased me about an old speech, and I forgot that everyone was watching us. Then Vivian set down her fork. Graham has exciting news. Claire's smile disappeared. Graham leaned back. Hale Capital is opening a Midwest Civic Investment Fund. We'll be working with cities on affordable housing, transit, and neighborhood development. Daniel's field, Thomas said. Exactly. Graham looked at me. We may find ourselves across the table from each other. Or on the same side, I said. That depends on whose definition of affordable wins. His tone was friendly, but the challenge beneath it was clear. Vivian continued. The fund will partner with the Whitmore Foundation. Claire's experience would make her the ideal executive liaison. Claire placed both palms on the table. We have discussed this. We have mentioned it, Vivian corrected. Discussion requires openness. I am not leaving Hartwell. No one is asking you to leave immediately. Graham spoke gently. It could be structured around your current responsibilities. Claire turned toward him. You do not get to structure my responsibilities. A silence opened around the table. Eleanor looked disappointed, but not in Claire. In all of them, Vivian's gaze shifted to me. Perhaps Daniel has an opinion. After all, this promotion will increase his responsibilities if Claire reduces hers. The trap was obvious. If I encouraged Claire to stay, I looked selfish. If I encouraged her to leave, I joined the family campaign. My opinion, I said, is that Claire already answered. Vivian smiled without warmth. How loyal, how respectful, Sophie said. Graham's expression remained pleasant. Daniel is right. Claire should choose. I only hope she is choosing freely rather than reacting against people who care about her. Claire went very still. I had seen that stillness in negotiations. It meant someone had crossed a line and did not yet realize how expensive the mistake would be. You prepared my resignation once, she said. You do not get to lecture me about freedom. Thomas looked down. Maya reached for her water. Vivian's face hardened. Graham did not deny it. I made a mistake because I thought we were building a life together. You were building one. You expected me to move into it. And now? He asked, glancing between us. Are you building something with Daniel? Or is he simply useful this weekend? The question hit with more force than it should have. Claire's chair scraped the floor as she stood. That is enough. Is it? Graham asked. You brought an employee to prove you had moved on. You told your grandmother a story. You linked his promotion to coming here. I did not link them. You mentioned them in the same conversation, didn't you? My attention snapped to Claire. She looked at me. Daniel, I explained. He knows, Vivian asked. He knows the promotion was approved first. But did he know Graham would be here before he agreed? Thomas said. Yes, I answered. Did he know we would be discussing the foundation partnership? Claire's face changed. That was the surprise. I turned to her. What partnership? Vivian answered before she could. Hartwell is one of 3 firms bidding to manage the Civic Fund's first projects. Claire's division submitted the proposal last month. The room seemed to narrow. I looked at Claire. You brought me into a house with a man whose company may award our firm a major contract. The proposal is handled by a separate team, she said quickly. You are not involved. Not yet. As regional director, I would be. I was going to tell you. When? Tomorrow after the birthday dinner. I heard my own rule in my head.
No surprises.
Graham leaned back as though he regretted the tension he had just created. Maybe he did. That did not make him innocent. I stood. Excuse me. Daniel, Claire said. I need air. The rain had become a cold, steady sheet. I took my coat from the hall and walked toward the covered terrace. But Claire followed me outside without one. Please let me explain. You had 2 hours in the car. The bid is confidential. I have a director's clearance. You did not yesterday. That is a technical excuse, and you know it. Rain blew under the terrace roof, darkening the shoulders of her dress. She folded her arms against the cold. I did not bring you here to influence Graham, she said. I would never do that. I believe you. Relief flashed across her face. But I was not finished. I also believe you knew how it would look if anyone outside this family learned about it. My boss gives me a promotion, then brings me as her boyfriend to the home of a potential client. Even if every decision is clean, the appearance is a disaster. I know. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I thought you would refuse. The honesty was brutal. I looked away toward the black water. So you decided for me.
No.
Yes, you withheld the one fact most likely to change my answer. She flinched. You're right. I expected a defense. Instead, she stood in the rain and accepted the blow. I wanted you here, she said. Not because of the bid. Not even because of Graham. I wanted one person in this house who knew me as the woman I chose to become. And I was afraid that if I gave you every reason to say no, you would. The words moved through me before I could stop them. They were not romantic, but they were intimate in a way touch had not been. That doesn't make it fair, I said. I know. I may need to leave. Her face emptied. I understand. The terrace door opened behind us. Eleanor stood there with a shawl around her shoulders. Claire, you will catch pneumonia to avoid admitting you are cold.
I'm fine, Nana.
You have said that since you were 6, it has never once been useful. She looked at me. Daniel, the guest room will still be yours if you choose to sleep in it. No one will stop you if you choose to go. But do not make a decision while angry enough to punish yourself with it. Then she placed the shawl around Claire and went back inside. Claire held the fabric closed at her throat. My grandmother likes you. Your grandmother sees too much. That is why everyone fears her. I stared at Claire for another moment. She was wet, shivering, and still trying not to ask me to stay. I'm not leaving tonight, I said. But tomorrow morning we call Hartwell's ethics officer. We disclose the weekend, the bid, and the promotion conversation. Everything. Her eyes widened. That could delay your appointment. I know. It could damage your reputation. I know. It could damage mine. That is the cost of doing this correctly. She looked toward the house, where her family's shadows moved behind the windows. Then we call. she said. That answer mattered more than an apology. She was willing to risk exactly what she had tried to protect. We returned to dinner separately. No one asked questions. Graham watched me with an expression I could not read. Claire sat beside me but did not touch my hand, perform affection, or ask me to rescue the mood. For the rest of the meal, we stopped pretending to be a couple. And somehow, that was when I began to feel closest to her. The storm intensified overnight. At 3 in the morning, thunder shook the windows and the power failed. I woke to darkness and the sound of footsteps in the hall. When I opened my door, Claire stood across from me holding a flashlight. Emergency, I asked. Backup generator should start automatically. It hasn't. Where is it? Basement. You are going down there alone? I run construction sites. You run them with electricians. She shined the light directly in my face. Are you always this helpful at 3 in the morning? Only with women who jeopardize my career before dessert. A reluctant smile touched her mouth. Come on. The generator had flooded from a clogged drain. We found Thomas already trying to clear it, and the three of us spent 40 minutes moving storage boxes and pushing water toward a floor pump. It was unglamorous, cold, and strangely clarifying. No one was acting. Claire knelt in old sweatpants, hair tied back, reading the maintenance instructions while I wrestled with a valve. Thomas swore at a rusted latch. When the generator finally coughed to life, the basement lights came on and we looked at one another, soaked and laughing. Later, Claire and I sat on the kitchen floor drinking tea while the rest of the house slept. You could still leave in the morning, she said. I could. Will you? I don't know. She nodded, accepting the uncertainty. Why did you choose me? I asked. I told you. I trust you. That's not the whole answer. She stared into her cup. You notice when people are being left behind. I waited. At the Riverton project, everyone wanted to announce the groundbreaking. You delayed the ceremony because 3 tenants had not received relocation assistance. It cost us press coverage and made the city angry. You did it anyway. That was my job.
No.
Your job was to deliver the project. You decided how. She lifted her eyes to mine. I thought if I brought someone like that into this house, maybe I would remember I wasn't wrong for wanting a life that felt like mine. The kitchen clock ticked above us. Rain ran down the dark windows. You should have just asked me to come as a friend, I said. Would you have? I considered it. Yes. She closed her eyes briefly, and I understood the pain of realizing that fear had created the very risk she hoped to avoid. I don't know how to ask for things without offering something in return, she said. That sounds lonely. It is efficient.
No.
It is lonely with better branding. She laughed softly. Then the laugh faded, leaving us in a silence that felt full rather than empty. I am not asking you for anything now, she said. Good. But I want to tell you something. I felt my heartbeat change. She continued. The committee offered me Chief Operating Officer last week. If I accept, your regional position will report to another executive. I haven't answered because taking it would mean staying at Hartwell and finally closing the door on the family foundation. Why didn't you tell me? This one was not relevant to your decision. It might be relevant now. Her gaze held mine. Neither of us said what had appeared between us. Saying it while she was still my boss, while the promotion was under disclosure, would turn honesty into another complication. So I stood and offered her my hand. We call ethics at 8. She took it and rose. Her fingers stayed in mine for 1 extra second. At 8, Claire and I called Hartwell's chief ethics officer from the library. We disclosed the signed promotion, her request, the family relationship, Graham's fund, and the fact that I had not known about the active bid before arriving. The officer asked direct questions and took notes. When the call ended, she suspended my promotion's effective date, pending an independent review, and removed Claire from the civic fund proposal. Neither of us argued. Afterward, Claire stood by the cold fireplace. I'm sorry, she said. I know. If the committee withdraws the promotion, then I deal with it. You earned it. And I need to know I received it cleanly. She looked at me with an expression that held pride, regret, and something neither of us was ready to name. The birthday dinner began at 6. Eleanor wore deep blue and entered on Sophie's arm while everyone applauded. For 2 hours, the family managed to celebrate her without turning Claire's life into an agenda. We ate roast chicken, listened to old stories, and watched Eleanor cry over a restored photograph of her and Claire's father sailing on the lake. Then Graham asked for everyone's attention. He raised a glass and announced that Hale Capital had selected the Whitmore Foundation as its primary civic partner. Vivian smiled as if the future had finally obeyed her. And, Graham added, I hope Claire will lead the partnership. Every face turned toward her. Claire did not stand immediately. She placed her napkin beside her plate, looked at her grandmother, and then at me. A day earlier, I might have rescued her with a joke or a declaration we had not earned. Instead, I waited. This choice had to be hers. She rose. I love this family, she said, but love does not give you authority over my life. I will not lead the partnership. I will not return to the foundation. And I will not reconsider a relationship I ended for reasons none of you had the courage to respect. Vivian's face tightened. Claire, this is your grandmother's birthday. Yes, which is why I am done allowing every gathering to become a negotiation. Graham set down his glass. Are you rejecting the work because of me?
No.
I am rejecting the assumption that my no is the beginning of your argument. The room went silent. Claire turned to Eleanor. Nana, I lied when I said Daniel and I were dating. I was afraid to arrive alone, and I used him as protection. He deserved better. So did you. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Are you alone? Claire's eyes moved toward me again. Not in the way I thought. I stood then, not because the performance required it, but because she had finally stopped hiding behind one. I came because Claire asked me, I said. I stayed because I learned who she is when no one gives her room to choose. I don't know what happens after this weekend, but I know I will not be used to pressure her, and I will not help anyone call control love. Graham looked at me. You think you know her after 2 days?
No.
I think I want the chance to. The admission seemed to surprise everyone, including me. Claire's eyes filled, though no tears fell. Daniel, I'm not asking for an answer tonight, I said, and I'm not asking while the company is reviewing my promotion. I'm only telling the truth. Eleanor lifted her glass. Finally, a useful toast. Sophie laughed first. Thomas followed. Even Maya smiled. Vivian did not, but she looked at her daughter with the unsettled expression of someone realizing an old method had stopped working. Graham left before cake. The next morning, Claire and I walked to the dock. The storm had passed, leaving the lake bright and still. I accepted the COO position, she said. Because of me? Because I want it. That distinction matters. It does. My new role begins after the review. You will report to the Vice President of Regional Operations. Not to me. I nodded. Good. She looked almost offended. Good. Very good. Understanding warmed her face. But we wait, I said, until the review is finished, until the reporting line is gone. No secret relationship.
No favors.
No pretending, she added.
No pretending.
She stepped closer. And after that? After that, I ask you to dinner. What if I say no? Then I choose a restaurant with a forgiving cancellation policy. She laughed, and this time I let myself love the sound. 3 weeks later, the independent review confirmed that my promotion had been approved on merit and that Claire had not influenced the committee after inviting me. It also concluded that she had shown poor judgment by combining the announcement with a personal request. She accepted a formal warning without protest. My promotion became effective the following Monday. Her CO appointment began the same day. At 6 that evening, I entered her office for the first time as someone who did not report to her. Claire looked up from her desk. Do you need something, Director Mercer? Yes. I placed 2 dinner reservations on the desk. One is at a quiet Italian place with excellent food, I said. The other is at a loud neighborhood restaurant where no one knows our names. You choose. She examined them. Is this an operational decision?
No.
It is a personal request with no professional benefit attached. Very carefully worded. I learned from a bad example. She came around the desk, stopping close enough that I could see the smile she was trying to contain. I choose the loud place, she said. And Daniel? Yes. This time, you can kiss me before dinner. I gave her time to change her mind. When she did not, I touched her face and kissed her gently. There was no audience, no promotion on the table, and no family waiting for proof. Just two people making a choice at the same time. 6 months later, we returned to the lake house for Eleanor's spring birthday lunch. Vivian was learning to ask questions without turning them into instructions. Thomas had stopped calling me reinforcements. Sophie still claimed she had missed Graham with the shrimp fork on purpose. Before lunch, Claire and I stood on the dock where we had first spoken honestly. She slipped her hand into mine. My grandmother wants to know whether you came this weekend because I asked or because she makes better cake than your mother did, she said. That is an unfair question. She specializes in those. I looked back at the house, then at the woman beside me. Tell her I came because you asked. Claire smiled. And the cake. I'm still conducting an independent review. She leaned against my shoulder, laughing, while sunlight moved across the water. The promotion had been mine before the weekend, but the life that followed was not a reward, a bargain, or something either of us had earned from the other. It was simply what happened when we stopped exchanging safety for control and began offering each other the freedom to choose. Would you have trusted Claire after her mistake? Or would the hidden business connection have ended everything for you? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about people who discover that real love begins where pressure, performance, and pretending finally end.